of Africa has been mentioned as one of the most disputed regions of the globe. Source of the Abai River, gate to the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, it is also a very important strategic region. However, it has been pilfered by armed conflicts, by insurgencies, and linguistic disputes, among others, which has opened the door for foreign engagement in the region to keep their interests. Interstate and interstate conflict on the grounds of politics, economics, and other social issues have been a concern for countries of that region, Ethiopia included. So the question remains, what should Ethiopia do to mitigate the security concerns in the diplomatic realm? Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Insights. I am Kirana Baina, and today we'll be talking about the security concerns in the Horn of Africa. More specifically, what diplomatic role Ethiopia can play in terms of mitigating the security concerns. I am joined by a man of many traits, a former ambassador of Ethiopia to Somalia, a colonel, a researcher of developmental economics, as well as a security expert, Ambassador Dr. Asmamaw Kelemu. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So as you know, the Horn of Africa through the ages has been an area that has numerous security concerns. It's a source for conflicts based on ethnicity or religion and other polarizations. So what has been a source of conflict or security concern for the Horn of Africa?
The Horn of Africa, as you put it, as you mentioned it very clearly, it is really an area of too much conflict, war, animosity, and in most cases destruction. So there is no any, it has been luring the most important areas of security concerns in this region. So it involves a lot of things. It involves, you see, mostly two important dimensions, security dimensions are being mentioned here. One is the internal conflict, internal animosities in this region, ethnocentric war, conflict, animosity, and destructions mostly. And in the second area, we can see the natural disaster, like drought, conflict, and also population displacement in many cases. So in this region, it involves, countries economically backward, economically poor. The security is unstable in many, in almost all countries in the Horn. So in this situation, what has happened? It has also become the center of Cold War politics during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. In this way, what has happened during my years of ambassadorship in Oman, in Mauritius, in Somalia also, I had been working as an ambassador at large also. So what has happened is that these countries mostly the fighting and the conflict arises from three important issues. One, the border issue in these countries, like Djibouti, Ethiopia, Somalia, Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia and Kenya, Sudan and Kenya, I mean Sudan and Ethiopia. In all these regions, in all these states, there is a state of border conflicts. So in order to maintain the hegemony and power of these countries, what they ally with these international powers. So at that time, the Cold War was just the socialist camp and that of the capitalist camp was divided. So the countries will ally with any of these countries who can supply them with weapons and military assistance programs, because you can see feasible, tangible economic developments. The other directions, in order to maintain this military power of these countries, they ally with either with the socialist camp or with the capitalist camp. They maintain as much as possible with weapons of really destruction, nothing else. So in this way, what happens is that in the respective countries, whether in Somalia, in Djibouti, Ethiopia, Sudan, in all these countries, then there arises the internal conflicts based on ethnocentric animosities. These ethnocentric have been pushed, assisted, trained, financed by other external enemies, like, for instance, Sudan, Egypt, and other countries. They assist all other ethnocentric movements in the form of liberation movements, in the form of secessionism. They go on supporting these groups, and it continues war and destruction.
Well, you've touched upon the involvement of other actors, despite other than the Horn of Africa region countries, which brings a very important point, because since it is a very important region that is a pathway of oil from the Persian Gulf for Europe and the United States, and other regional actors, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, have also started to be engaged in this region due to their own interests. Mm-hmm. So you've actually mentioned it a bit earlier, but I want to ask you here, international actors, it might be organizations or other countries or other powers, they have exasperated, wouldn't you say, to an extent, the security concerns of the Horn of Africa. Is that a right statement to make?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely right. You know, there are two important natural resources here in the Horn of Africa: the Red Sea and that of the River Nile. Mm-hmm. These are the two important and profound vital resources that really creates hardship and great war destructions that created interested groups in the area. For instance, take the case of the Red Sea. In the Red Sea area, there is the Arab side, the Saudis on the eastern flank, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, and Djibouti on the eastern flank. Mm-hmm. So the river canal, the natural Red Sea canal, which is very, very important strategically, economically, and communication capabilities. So in this area, there are two important choke points in the Red Sea. One, in the Suez Canal, mm-hmm, at the north, and the other one at the Bab el-Mandeb in the south, which constitutes the most important choke points in this area. In this Red Sea area, 80% of the oil of the oil route of the oil import-export route is Red Sea area. This is very important commercially, strategically, and also economically. So in these areas, that means the Saudis and other Arab League countries have declared as a policy to make Red Sea as an Arab Sea, an Arab League. They had declared several times. In 2021, they called the Red Sea Security Council program. In this council, they invited the Saudis invited Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan, Djibouti, and very interestingly, which has no any Red Sea connection, they invited Somalia. You know, Somalia, in fact, is laid in an important area which constitutes that of the Indian Ocean. So the Indian Ocean links with this Red Sea at the choke point of Bab el-Mandeb. So those countries which controls this area controls the entire strategic benefit of this region. So that is why these countries, they didn't invite Eritrea or Ethiopia to this council, which it really affects also the strategic importance of these countries. So Red Sea and that of the Blue Nile has a vital interest for the whole region, for the whole countries in this region. What has happened now? That is why they didn't include, Israel also, because Israel, as the Bab el-Mandeb, has a connection in that of Red Sea. It has interest. It has its own strategic interest as well. So the problem has become not for the mutual benefit of the regional strategic importance of the region, but it is the drive is just to control the area, to control the Red Sea, to control the Nile, and then to make these countries in a very weak position. So these countries like Ethiopia, Ethiopia and Eritrea has become the subject of attack and the subject of war animosities from the interested countries around Red Sea and that of the Blue Nile area, the Nile region. So what is most important in this linkage and in this rivalry, animosity, war and attrition, destruction and disruption, what's most important is for Ethiopia to maintain its position as a strong, viable, economically and militarily a viable, strong country. It has to start.
Yes, well, going to the role that Ethiopia will play, since that's our major area of discussion for today. As you know, in the Horn of Africa, the conflicts, whatever form they may take in border areas, risk a major spillover, which is a concern for the other countries as well. I mean, conflict in or security issues in Somalia concern Ethiopia, Ethiopia's security issues concern Eritrea, and vice versa for all of them. And Ethiopia, whatever the relation might be now with the Western powers, had been considered an ally of peacekeeping or keeping the security in check. So now that you've mentioned it, undoubtedly Ethiopia is a major area where it can control the complex, the security complex of the Horn of Africa. So let me just ask you a general question. What sort of security diplomacy, let's call it, can Ethiopia implement, or what has Ethiopia been implementing so far in terms of keeping the security in check or making sure the security is not, doesn't overspill and dismantle the region?
In any region, I think there has to be some power somewhere, to maintain the balance and the security status quo, and to become the center of gravity in any region. For instance, in West Africa, or in South Africa, in East Africa, or in Central Africa, there has to be certain regional countries that must be powerful and that must be considered as the central, the centrifugal force of that region. By the same token, you see, in the Horn of Africa, the most viable, the most strong country diplomatically, economically, or militarily must be Ethiopia. Naturally, it must be. You see, if Ethiopia has become strong enough, it can stabilize the rest of other regional members of this country, of this region, countries of this region. So, if Ethiopia is militarily strong, economically strong, and also politically and diplomatically strong, it will maintain the rest of other countries as a satellite in the, of this region to become peace and stable. Why? You know, Ethiopia has no any claim, any territorial problem from its neighbors. It has no any. Okay? Second, Ethiopia has, you know, very vital interests, such as Djibouti and Ethiopia, Red Sea or Eritrea and Ethiopia via Assab, via Djibouti. So at the same time also via Berbera, via Mogadishu. On the Kenyan side, it has the port of you know, what you call Labu. You know, in these connections, Ethiopia can be a centrifugal force in the middle to maintain the security, the economical connections, and also the transportation system connections. It will be viable to maintain the stability and the maintenance of security of the region. Three important issues can arise here. One, Ethiopia, as I said before, has no any territorial claim or regional claim to control over. So it is only those countries around, like Somalia or other countries, which claim some territorial claims in the country, which can be the cause of friction and war. The other one, you know, in the maintenance of terrorist groups in the region, like Al-Shabaab, like Wayani, you know, in the maintenance, in the control of these terrorist groups in this region, Ethiopia is the only viable and strong country to do the job. Third, you know, from the resource area, you know, countries in any region can maintain peace and stability, providing that they create and develop mutual benefits. Mutual benefits such as what? You know, mutual benefits such as commercial interactions, electrical supply, water supply systems. You know, such vital resources will create what's called the mutual interest gravitational forces. These gravitational forces, mutual interests, will maintain or will bring about peace and stability, because others' destruction, others' peace is also creates a mutual destruction on the other parts of the region. So in these conditions, the Ethiopia's position in the region will only be the source of stability and security, rather than you know, animosity and war. So these three things can be maintained as you know, as a central as a centrifugal force in the region, which Ethiopia is a big country, a large country with a large population, with a democratic system, it has resources to supply. You know, whether you take it Djibouti, Somalia, or Sudan, or Egypt, you know, the barrel of water, the supply, the head of water supply is Ethiopia. Look, Wabi Shebele, it really strives into Somalia. Nile, Sudan and Egypt, the Barrow River, and the neighborly countries, they supply from this water. Even Kenya, you know, in all these areas, Ethiopia is the most viable country that can bring peace, prosperity, stability, and brotherhood in this region.
Yeah, well, speaking of diplomacy in this region, since, I mean, there's diplomacy in two sects. There's dealing with the other countries in the same region in terms of the three areas that you mentioned, especially in trade and, you know, the water, cooperation, sharing, all of that. And there's also another sect, since we're saying we've agreed that external actors are very much engaged in this region. There are two realms of diplomacy for Ethiopia to deal with. There's one with the Horn of Africa countries, including the Greater Horn, and the countries that come to, you know, engage from external actors such as the United States and others. I just mentioned the United States for reference. So what can the approach be in terms of with the Horn of Africa countries and external actors, because it can't be the same. Obviously, other countries of the West seek their own interests. So how can we meet in the middle in terms of Ethiopia dealing with the Horn of Africa countries and dealing with external countries, that is countries that aren't part of the Horn, that come to consolidate their own interests?
America is very, very much interested in two things. One, it wants the region or the government of Ethiopia to be loyal to that country. This is a political loyalty. They need that. Second, they want to protect it from the sphere of other influences. You know, they don't want the influence or the interference or the domination economically or strategically or security-wise. They don't want the grip of the Chinese in this region or that of Russia in this region. So look, for instance, at the Bab el-Mandeb area or the Djibouti area. There are nearly 3 military international bases in that region. The Americans, the French, the Chinese, the Egyptians, and sometimes I think the Turks also. They are hovering about in that region to control that important strategic choke point, the Bab el-Mandeb. So they have these bases in this area. This means they want to control the Red Sea area in that of the Nile Basin, so that this will be used. In the first place, it will be used for the domination in this area and the protection of the vital oil route in this region. Second, they want to use their power and their influence so that no other external forces like China or like any other country or the Turks to control, to influence this region. So in this, so that the diplomatic action is also being used in another way. For instance, by influencing the Ethiopian government, like on the issue on the River Nile and that of the Grand Renaissance dam, they want to appease and to get the support of the Egyptians. They want to have their influence over Ethiopia. That means this is what is called diplomatic proxy.
Yes.
The diplomatic proxy works in such a way, America has no a direct use or a direct interest on the River Nile. But in order to protect the interests of Egyptians, they use their influence over Ethiopia. The same in other areas also. The same on the Red Sea area. In order to, for instance, during the Cold War, what has happened when we had war with Somalia, America refused to supply arms to Ethiopia. And the Soviets, by the same token, stopped supplying arms to Somalia. So, two important influential friends in the Middle East, American influential friends in the Middle East, the Saudis and the Israelis, they started fighting against America diplomatically. What they tried to influence America. The Saudis want America to supply arms to Somalia. The Israelis, at the same time, also want us to influence America to supply arms to Ethiopia. So it created a bifurcation of allies in different ways, in this way. So by the same token, to maintain the diplomatic neutrality as a policy, is in the first place is very, very important in that area, in this area. So now Ethiopia can maintain neutrality and can maintain its position strongly here as it is in two important ways. One, it has to maintain a strong military position in its own right. It can maintain its own military right. So if it is strong, then everybody will side the strong. No, when you are weak, everybody will be against you. When you are strong, everybody will be with you. Mm-hmm. So Ethiopia must maintain its military strength in its own right. It's one. Second, by maintaining this, it can really satisfy the needs or the fears or the desires of other external powers like the United States or Europeans. Europeans and Americans, they want two things. One, they want that region, that political leadership, say in Ethiopia, to be as much as possible to be neutral, not to be used by other external forces. This is what they want. The second one, particularly in the areas of Red Sea and that of the River Nile, the policy, the position of Ethiopia at present is found to be acceptable, either in Europe, in Africa, or in America. That means it uses the Nile River for the production of electric power, nothing and not to, obstacle the flow of the river into either Sudan or to that of Egypt. So this is obviously accepted by America and by the rest of the countries. So the way we are doing it now is in a good position. So Ethiopia is now I think it's now neutral. It's really trying to maintain its territorial integrity. It's like maintains to try to make peace and stability in its own country. There is no any other interest. So it has to prove to the rest of the world. So it is doing this way to maintain peace, stability, and prosperity in Ethiopia.
All right. Dr. Asmamaw, thank you very much for your time. And with that, today's Diplomatic Insight comes to an end. We talked about the diplomatic stance that Ethiopia should take to ensure peace and to ensure security in the Horn of Africa. I was Kirana Baina, and until next time.